Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about all those negative thoughts you have inside your head. Worry, anxiety, fear, regret, self-doubt, etc. Why they're there, why it's more common than you think, the biological explanation of these thoughts, and most importantly, what you can do to stop those thoughts, to get rid of those thoughts. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Candace James. I am a success and resilience coach. So I am helping people just like you create inner peace on demand, i.e., get rid of those negative thoughts when we want, where we want, so that you can handle all of life's challenges with more ease. And ultimately, so you can create calm, joy, and peace of mind on a regular basis. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm going to start today's session off with just a little bit of a story. I'm going to tell you a story. And that story starts when I was about 15 years old. I was in Cuba with my parents. And we were going on this excursion for the day. And basically, we went to some farm that was outside of the city. And we were doing this, like, get on a horse and they're going to take you around this beautiful place so that we could see it and admire it. I don't know. It was a fun little outing. Okay. So we have to get on these horses, and it wasn't a big horse, but I get on my horse. And the idea is that we take the horses in a line around the property. So they give me my horse for the day and they get me up on the horse. And the rest of the people start kind of going along. I'm one of the last people to get on with the horse. And all of a sudden, I'm supposed to be following in line. And my horse moves out of the line, goes to the side, and just starts galloping forward. Now I'm terrified, okay? I am not a skilled horse rider. And this horse is galloping forward. And all I can see ahead of me is this tree branch that is right in line with my head. And I'm going straight forward on this horse. I do not know how to make the horse stop. And all I can think is, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And thankfully, just before I get to that tree branch, I somehow lay backwards kind of on the horse, very movie-esque, okay? Lay back on the horse and I go under the tree branch. I sit back up. I'm like, holy wow, that was intense. The horse goes a little bit further and gets to the front of the line of all the horses with all the people. And once he's at the front, he just stops. He slows down and he starts trotting in line like everybody else. I'm like, what happened there? Afterwards, somebody from the farm did tell me that horse was normally in the front. That horse was normally the leader of the pack, and I guess was very upset that it was at the back. So it just needed to get to the front of the line. Unfortunately, I was on it, and I did not know how to control this horse or what it was doing or where it was going. So I was terrified. Now, the story continues a few years later. I'm back in Canada, and I'm going on what's supposed to be this leisurely horse ride with some friends. It was like a weekend activity, and we get to this place. This time I'm on a really big horse, and they put me on the horse and we start to go towards this field. There's this beautiful path in nature that we're going to take the horses down. And again, as we were passing this field, this horse that I'm on decides that it is time to gallop full speed ahead through the field. And now I'm not a skilled horse rider. I'm telling you again. And so I'm sitting on the horse and my spine, every time that horse gallops or takes some steps, I'm going up and down, up and down, up and down, and I am just smashing my spine down on that horse's back. And I am in so much pain, and there's nothing I can do, and I'm terrified. I'm like, am I going to survive this? Part of me wanted to throw myself off, but he was going so fast, I thought that might kill me. So I didn't. Eventually, somebody who works at the place came, corralled the horse in. I got off. I was like, this is just another sign that horse riding is really not for me. So I stopped riding the horses. I met my friends back at the barn, and that was that. And why the heck am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story because the horse is very much like our mind. In both of these scenarios, the horse was on a mission. It thought it was doing something that it was supposed to be doing. The first horse felt like he was supposed to be at the front of the pack, so he took off. The second one, I don't know, he's used to playing in the fields, so he just decided to go play in the fields. Now, I, being the rider, if I was more skilled, I would have been able to pull on the reins, do whatever to make him kind of come back to me, slow down, do what he needs to do. But instead, I was hanging on for dear life. I was scared. I was in pain. And I was like, just make this end. And that is how a lot of us often feel when it comes to our mind. Our mind is taking us down all these avenues, all these negative thought spirals, and we don't know how to rein it back in, how to make those stop so that we aren't always feeling all of these thoughts of anxiety, fear, stress, worry, etc. Self-doubt. Okay? So when you see a horse rider who is very skilled, if you've ever watched them, it's like the horse and the rider are one. They move so gracefully together. It's like they are actually one being. Like that rider is somehow, telecommunicating through their mind to the horse on where they want to go. They are so aligned. They are so together. They get to their destination in one piece and they are peaceful and they go there in such a beautiful, graceful way. And that's what we need to do. That's what we need to learn to do with our mind. Our mind is like that horse. Our mind is a tool for us to use. Just like that horse, perhaps is a tool for us or a vehicle for us to get from point A to point B on that horse. And our mind is a tool for problem solving, communicating, reading books, etc., etc. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, our mind has taken control. And we're going to talk about why that is in a minute. But essentially, what we need to do is we need to learn how to take that power back. Right now, if you are constantly wrapped up in negative thoughts all day, your mind is using you. And what we need to learn to do is learn how to take back that control and use our mind so that we can be that graceful horse rider, just floating through the fields, doing all that thing, looking awesome, being in control of that horse, instead of that horse running wildly through the field and trying to chop someone's head off on a tree branch, like happened to me. Thankfully, I'm much better these days at controlling my mind than I ever was that horse. So all this to say, right now, if you are experiencing these negative thought spirals on the regular, whether that's, self-doubt, whether that's anxiety or fear about the future, worry, whether it's thinking about all the things in the past that you wish you could change, or, how you feel perhaps like, there's no way that you're ever going to get where you want in the future because you can't even control this part of your mind. And so what we're going to talk about today is why does our mind run away with us and how we can actively stop that. So there is a quote, and it says, "We are not our thoughts, but our thoughts can become us." And so I want you just for a moment, and if it's safe to do so, I'm not sure where you're listening to this, but I want you to just close your eyes if it is safe to do so, and if that feels comfortable. Close your eyes, and I want you to imagine something that happened to you in the past that is negative. Now, I don't want you going too deep, too awful, too traumatic, just somebody hurt your feelings, somebody made you upset, whatever it is. Don't go too deep, but just close your eyes and think about that for a moment. What did you see? What did you hear? And what did you feel? How did that incident make you feel? If you were angry, think about that anger. How did that make you feel? And I want you to notice what comes up in your body. As you're thinking about this moment in time that made you feel angry, frustrated, hurt, sad, whatever, scared, what happens in your body? Can you start to feel something happening in your chest, in your stomach? Perhaps your chest feels constricted and tight, and it didn't a moment ago. Perhaps you have that icky feeling in your stomach. Perhaps if you were angry in this moment, you start to feel your fist clench up a little bit, your body tensing. Perhaps you notice that your face, your mouth is turning into a frown. And then I'll invite you just to notice that. Take a deep breath, shake it out. Let's get that away. We know that we are not in that situation right now. And instead, I want you to bring yourself into a really happy situation. This could be a happy situation in the past. It could be when you were 2. It could be when you were 15. It doesn't matter. It could be 10 minutes ago. A situation in which you felt happy. You felt some sense of joy or excitement. It could be something that's going to happen in the future that you're really excited about. Whatever it is, I just want you to now sink into that feeling. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? And notice how your body changes once again. Perhaps that constriction in your chest now feels light and open and airy. Perhaps that feeling in your stomach has changed to one of butterflies or excitement, or perhaps there's nothing there at all. As you really focus on this moment, do you feel the corners of your mouth raising into a smile? Now take a deep breath and blow that one out too. We are not in either of those situations right now, although we brought ourselves there for a moment. But I want you to notice just how your body changed when you thought of that negative thought, that negative experience, versus the positive experience. How did that change in your body? And so when I say we are not our thoughts, but our thoughts can become us. We were just thinking in that exercise about something that was not happening here. We were thinking about something that happened in the past or something we're excited about in the future. And yet our body was reacting. And so it's so important to realize that these thoughts that we have on a regular basis are actually changing the way that our body is reacting, right? So when you're thinking negative thoughts all day, when your head is stuck in these thought spirals and loops about what's not possible in the future, what wasn't possible in the past, who hurt you, when they hurt you, what if someone hurts you again, right? When we're stuck in these thought spirals, the thing is our brain can't tell the difference between something that's really happening and something that we're imagining or thinking about. And so every time that you start to think about one of these things, your body is responding as if it's actually happening, which means we have something called the stress response, right? We have the fight, flight, freeze response, right? So when we are in perceived danger or any type of, or real danger, our brain cells send signals to the rest of our body, and it releases things like cortisol, our stress hormone, and adrenaline. And it tells our body, okay, get ready. We're either going to fight this thing, we're going to run away from it, or we're going to freeze. We're going to do nothing, right? Now, these were very helpful responses, particularly when we were, when we're actually in physical danger, or when we were living off the land back in the day, right? The brain is designed so that if we are in danger, it shuts down areas that are not necessary, and it floods our stress response so that we can be ready to act. Now, unfortunately, we aren't usually in life or death or actual physical danger situations. Fortunately, we're not. But our brain is still responding as if we are. So every time that you have these negative thoughts or these worries or these fears or these anxious ideas inside of your head, your brain is still sending that response to your stress response in your body, into your nervous system. And it's responding as if it's actually happening. And the more that we send that down, so the more thoughts we have that are negative, and the more that it sends that down to our body, we're escalating our stress response. We're adding more cortisol, more adrenaline, more cortisol, more adrenaline, and it's building. So when I talk about, the power of creating inner peace so we can handle life's challenges with more ease. What's happening is, let's say we have a challenge, and now these challenges can be big or they can be small. Okay. We have a small challenge, like we wake up late and then we're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for work or for school or for whatever it is that we're going to. I wake up late. Now I'm stressed out a little bit because, oh my gosh, am I going to make it in time? And I run in the kitchen and I go to make my coffee. And then because I'm in this kind of excited state of stress, maybe I drop the coffee all over the ground. I'm like, oh my God, now I got to clean up the coffee. So now your stress response is here when you wake up late, and then you drop the coffee. So now it's here. And then, you can't find that shirt you were going to wear. So now it's here, right? So challenges can be very small, but what's happening is we just keep increasing that stress response. And then somebody says something to you like, oh, did you remember we have that thing tonight? And you're like, rah, 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 I can't do that. You always want me to do things, right? We start snapping at people because our stress response is so elevated. And the reason that we are so wired into these negative situations, into these negative thoughts each and every day, is because our brain has a job. Our brain has a job, okay? Our brain's job is to keep us alive. And so we are, our brain, right from the very beginning of time, has been wired to keep us alive. So in order to keep us alive, it needs to look for threats. It's looking for threats all the time. Okay? And here's a really fun fact about the brain. Our brain receives approximately 11 million pieces of information per second. 11 million pieces of information is coming at it. And we are consciously aware of approximately 40 of them. 40. Which leaves 10,999,960 pieces of information that our brain receives that it has to discard. And so our brain has become very good at its job, and it sorts through these 11 million pieces of information every second and shows us what we need to know. And so, think about if you're going for a walk in a forest, and let's say two of these pieces of information are, these flowers smell delightful, and another one is a snake comes across the road. Which one is more important? Remembering that the brain's job is to keep you alive. Which one is more important to pay attention to? It's more important to pay attention to the snake. It could be a poisonous snake. So we have to think about the snake. The flowers, once we have perceived everything else as safe, the brain will say, smelling flowers, right? But if we think that, or if the brain believes that there is any fear in danger, it is programmed to find that danger. If there's any danger around, it's programmed to find that danger. And so our brain has something called a negativity bias. It's trained to look for threats or negative situations. Dr. Rick Hansen in the book The Buddha's Brain says the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon, ping, for positive ones. And it is this way because it has been trained to find threats. The interesting thing about our modern society, and if you're here watching this right now, the chances are you are not in a place of imminent danger. Because if you are in imminent danger, I would highly suggest you turn off this video and go deal with that. Okay? And imminent danger meaning that your life is at risk right in this very moment. Okay? We are not typically in our modern society, particularly if you're watching this video, in imminent danger all the time. But our brain is still wired to find threats. And so it constantly pulls out negative things that might hurt us, make us feel sad, right? We aren't necessarily always in a place for danger, but we can start to think, and we do start to think, about what might happen in the future that could bring us danger, right? Oh my gosh, I don't know if, the cost of groceries is going up. right? The cost of groceries is going up. Oh my gosh, the cost of groceries. So now you think about this all day. Maybe every time you have a snack, every time you eat your meal, you start to think, man, groceries are so much more expensive. And your brain ruminates on this because your brain is saying, if groceries are expensive, maybe we can't afford it, maybe we won't be able to eat, death, right? The brain's job is to keep you alive. And so it's constantly looking for threats in our environment. But here's the thing, when you eat a snack, worrying about the cost of groceries isn't helpful, right? What would be helpful in that moment is sitting down, making a budget, saying, okay, this is exactly how much I can spend. These are ways to save money. I can go and clip some coupons. I can go and do this, right? Those are helpful ways to deal with this. The brain going, cost of groceries is going up. Cost of groceries is going up. Oh my gosh, how are we going to afford that? Oh my gosh, this and that and the other. That's not helpful, unfortunately. Our brain thinks it's being helpful, alerting us to threats, but it's actually not helpful. Okay? So each and every day, the average human, and going back to this negativity bias, right? Each and every day, the average human has approximately 60,000 thoughts per day. 80% of those thoughts are negative. And 95% of those thoughts are repetitive. So the average human, the average one of you are going around all day telling yourself negative shit on repeat and then wondering why you're so stressed out. So every time you have that negative thought, that worry, that anxiety, that fear, that self-doubt, that regret, any of those things, your body is responding as if it's really happening. And so you're increasing your stress levels. And then what happens is your amygdala, which receives these threats to it, it's a part of the brain, just back here, the amygdala. Some say it's one of our most primitive parts of the brain, the oldest parts of the brain. It sends out alert, alert, alert. And our amygdala is here. So the information comes up through our brainstem, then we have the amygdala, and then you shut this, and this is where your prefrontal cortex is. And it's like this kind of on both sides of the brain. So all the information comes up here to the amygdala first. Now, this is a very simplified story of how the brain works. Okay, so don't think this is all that happens in the brain, but basically we get information sent up through the brainstem from our senses and from everything else, and then it goes to the amygdala, and the amygdala says alert. And this is our prefrontal cortex here. This is our area of the brain that is mainly responsible for communication, critical thinking, problem solving, relationships, all that kind of stuff that some might say differentiate us from animals. Okay. But it's all that kind of stuff. The critical thinking, problem solving, communication, relationship, etc. kind of happens up in here. And when the amygdala perceives a threat, if it thinks it needs to send out the fight, flight, or freeze response, boom, this part of the brain goes offline. The critical thinking, problem solving, communication, etc. So we are much less able to handle any situation that comes our way. So when we spill the coffee, if we are already really high in our stress response, the amygdala will shout out, warning, warning. Okay. Now again, this is very simplified, and actually Dr. Dan Siegel, this is actually from Dr. Dan Siegel. It's the hand model of the brain, if you're interested in learning more about that. But essentially, when we constantly think negative thoughts all day, we're sending it to the amygdala, the amygdala is firing, and the amygdala can actually grow, and it's getting bigger. And when the amygdala believes that there is a threat, our brain takes energy from other parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex, basically turns it offline and operates from this lower brain level, which is why we constantly feel like maybe we're snapping at people that don't deserve it, right? Like sometimes you snap at your loved ones the most when you're having a stressful day. Maybe it's why you feel like you go from 0 to 100 so fast. You think that everything's fine. Someone says one thing and boom, everything feels really upsetting, right? It's why we all of a sudden start crying or yelling or something when it doesn't actually seem that intense in hindsight. Okay, so basically what we're doing by thinking negative thoughts all day, right? So our brain is trained to find threats. So then we ruminate on them all day. And then we are growing this part of our brain, the amygdala, because what we practice grows stronger. We'll talk about that again, right? Just like if you're in the gym and you are always working just your biceps, right? There's always that joke about like, don't miss leg day. where these people have huge upper bodies and really small legs. If we are constantly in this state of stress, our amygdala is growing, which means we're firing off more stress hormones on the regular, and this space here for critical thinking, problem solving, etc., becomes less. It has less energy. And so we're not able to think critically, problem solve, etc., which just keeps us in this spiral of stress and anxiety and fear. And so you may be wondering, okay, well, if this is how our brain works, if this is truly, biology, that this is happening, we're kind of doomed. But we're not. We're actually not doomed, because we can actually change the way that our brain functions. So again, just like if you go to the gym, right? Some people are born thinner, more muscular, bigger, whatever, right? We're all born with different body shapes and sizes. But by going to the gym, we can change that to some degree, okay? We can change that to some degree. And it's the exact same thing with our brain. We can do brain exercises that will actually shrink down the amygdala so we don't get fired off so quickly. And we can increase the gray matter in our prefrontal cortex to help that come online faster. So instead of this amygdala going, we spilled the coffee, this is terrible, because it's all stressed out, we can actually keep the prefrontal cortex online, and it's going to say, wait a second, this isn't such a big deal. Take a breath, clean it up, and let's carry on. Okay, again, simplified version of what the brain really does. But the way that we actually change the brain, right? It's like, we all know, if you want to get better abs, do crunches or do whatever, do sit-ups, do these things, right? I know there are some better exercises than crunches, but anyways, that is something that you can do to build muscle in your core, right? So we can literally build muscles in our brain, essentially, build different areas of the brain, shrink other areas of the brain, right? Like if you're going for a smaller body, you want to shrink the fat, grow the muscle, right? We want to shrink the amygdala, grow the prefrontal cortex. And so we can do that through something called neuroplasticity. And this is basically the brain's ability to reorganize by creating new neural connections over the lifespan. So neural connections, basically when your brain has something that's going on, or when you have a thought, or when you see something, or when you have to do something, brains are basically electric fields of energy, and they are wiring. There's little like synapses and right? All these little things talking to each other inside the brain. Now, I didn't say I was a neuroscientist, okay? I learned from neuroscientists, but my explanations are very basic, okay? But anyways, we are basically, every time that we have a thought or that we have to do an action, we have neural connections inside of our brain. So as I'm doing this, all these things are firing and wiring together as I'm relaying this information to you. Now, neuroplasticity means that the more that you do or think something, the stronger that connection gets. So, you think about driving a standard car, or playing the piano. I've played the piano since I was 4. When you first start to play the piano, you have to really think about every single thing, right? They show you all those notes on the music or on the music staff, and they're like, what's this one? And I'm like, I don't know. E. They're like, no, D. Great. Okay, D. Right? It takes so long to read those music notes. Now, or even way back, but after a couple of months or years, when I started to see those same notes on the music staff, I didn't even have to individually read them. I would just know, oh, that's C, E, and G. Great. And my fingers, I wouldn't even have to think, look where to put them. They just go on the keyboard and they do what they need to do. Just like reading. At first, we're like, that's A, that's B. When you put A, B together, it's AB, right? You have to go through all of that. Then your brain starts to connect. We start to create bigger neural pathways. And now you can see, right? You can just see a word and you know what that word is. There's all those games on the internet where they even mix up the words in the letter, and most people can still read it just fine because your brain is just finding patterns all the time. And so this is neuroplasticity. It's the creation of stronger or less strong neural pathways in the brain. And so when we can focus on particular things and do specific exercises, we can grow neural pathways where we want them. And we can shrink neural pathways when they are not as helpful. Okay? So I want to, basically what we can do, right, is we can focus on better neural pathways and shrink the smaller ones. Okay? So I'm going to take you just through a little exercise here that will help to illustrate what I'm talking about. If it's possible to do so, I don't know where you're listening to this again. If it's possible to do so, I'm going to invite you just to close your eyes and relax and take a deep breath. And again, if it's not safe to close your eyes, just focus on what I'm saying and allow your mind to visualize as I go. And I want you to imagine that you're driving a large vehicle that has terrible handling. It's not a four-wheel drive, okay? It's a old car like my old 1990 rear wheel pickup truck. Very difficult to drive sometimes. And you're driving along and you come to a fork in the road. You look down the one road and you see that it goes through a massive forest. It's a very small path. There's tree branches covering bits of the road. There's some boulders in the way. There's some potholes. Definitely doesn't look easy. And then on the other road, it's clear and smooth, it's paved, you can see ahead of you for days. You'd likely choose the clear road. But now, what if I tell you that at the end of the covered, more difficult road is a gorgeous blue-green lake at the bottom of an immense mountain range. There's fruit trees and raspberry bushes everywhere. There's animals playing, birds are chirping. It's a beautiful scene. And then at the end of the clear, smooth road, there's just a patch of dried up land. A bit of muddy water pooled in the middle with dead bugs floating in it. There's not a tree in sight for shade, and there is no water for refreshment. Now that you know the destination, which would you choose? And so, of course, you want to take the difficult road. You take it slowly at first, stopping to trim the trees in your way. Perhaps move a boulder off the road. Your tire gets stuck in a pothole, but you manage to get it out and you keep moving. Eventually, you get to the lake and you sit by that crystal blue lake looking up at the mountain, taking in the view. But it took you a long time to get there, and so you don't stay long before heading back. Then a few days later, you decide to go back to that lake. This time, you're bringing in a nice picnic lunch. You leave earlier this time so you can spend more time at the lake. But this time, the road seems a bit easier. The trees were trimmed back just a few days ago, and you know that where that pothole was that you got stuck in, so you managed to go around it. You get to the lake and you sit there for a while with your picnic lunch, enjoying the sights, the sounds, the warm sun beating down on you, and the gentle breeze brushing past. The birds are chirping and the sound of waters gently crashes into the lake's shore nearby. And from there on out, each time you decide to go to the lake to take that path, it gets a little bit easier. And you get to stay there just a little bit longer. Each time you go, it's faster and easier as your tires make grooves on that road for you to follow. They wear down a path, and eventually you don't even remember why you considered going any other way. Through neuroplasticity, we can literally rewire our brain. Just like we can create a path to this beautiful lake in nature, we can create a path within our mind that brings us to peace, to calm, to a better way of living, of being, of engaging with ourselves and with others. Instead of trimming trees, we use brain exercise to light up positive neural pathways. And the more often we do this, the easier the path becomes to follow. So if your eyes are closed, I invite you to open them again now. This is the power of neuroplasticity. What you practice grows stronger. So right now, for example, you may look in the mirror and think, oh, I'm fat and ugly. And every time you look in the mirror, you have similar thoughts. Every time that you have a similar thought, you are creating a stronger neural pathway. It gets stronger and stronger. It becomes more and more of a superhighway where you don't even think about it. You see mirror, have thought. See mirror, have thought. And what we can do is we can learn how to unprogram that. That is our subconscious mind that has been built, that has been wired to say, see this, think that. See this, do that, right? And what we can do is we can use brain exercises to actually strengthen what we do want and unstrengthen what we don't want. And so we do that again through a variety of brain exercises. So for the past 13 years, I have been studying and practicing applied mindfulness. So a lot of times when people hear the word mindfulness, it has been wildly overused, in my opinion, in the past 10 years or so. But mindfulness, it's not about sitting on a mat for 5 hours and meditating, although I've done that. But really, applied mindfulness is the practice of bringing mindfulness exercises into your daily life. How do we bring mindfulness practices into our daily life? And mindfulness is simply a state of being present. And when we are present, that means that our mind is not elsewhere. Our mind is so often in the past or in the future, and we can train our mind to be right here with us in this moment. And I've also trained and studied and practiced in neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, is essentially the ability to tap into the subconscious mind, to understand what neural pathways have we created super highways with, and are they serving us? Usually, not always. Or are they not? Okay. And so looking at what are those pathways that we currently have, are they serving us, and how can we change them? And so with neuro-linguistic programming, we tap into the subconscious. What is programmed in there? What is helping? What is not? Then we can find the ones that are not. We can use applied mindfulness and other brain exercises to rewire those pathways. And it doesn't take a lot of time. In fact, it takes really 5 to 10 minutes a day maximum. In fact, I can show you how to do those practices while you are doing the dishes, driving to work, having a shower, right? We can practice these and rewire our brain at every single moment that we are awake and aware of the desire to practice, aware of the desire to rewire that mind. And when we can rewire that mind, when we are focused on what no longer serves us and what would serve us in the future, we can then rewire the brain to serve us. We can take back that control, like I said in the beginning. We can take back control of the mind. We can learn to use our mind instead of our mind using us by running away with these negative thought spirals, worry, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, regret, etc. And what we can essentially do is, when we take back that control, it's like we have a remote control. When we notice these negative thought spirals going on, it's like we can just take that control and hit pause. I don't want to hear this right now. And then you can push play when you need to use your mind. So just like that beautiful horse rider riding the horse, you can work with your mind instead of your mind running away from you. And in turn, this allows you a sense of peace and calm. It'll lower your stress response. You'll produce less cortisol, which means you will not be, going from 0 to 100. You will not be snapping at those you love. And ultimately, you will have the power to cultivate and create joy, peace, calm within you whenever you want. So the good news is, everything that's going on in your mind right now, all those negative thought spirals, all those thoughts, worries, anxieties, and fears, those are completely normal because you're human. And the good news is we can change that. We can create less of those. We can create inner peace and calm on demand whenever we want, so that all of life's challenges can feel more easy. And ultimately, we can make our lives better when we learn to use our mind instead of our mind using us. So if this sounds like something of interest to you, I am hosting a 10-week program called Make Life Better 10 Weeks to Inner Calm. And I'm going to show you all of the practices that I have learned over the last 13 years. In the last 13 years, I have been studying and practicing and teaching all of these tools, forgot my word there, for myself and for clients. And recently, I was diagnosed with a life-altering disease that literally affects every single moment of every single day. And I was able to get through that very easily, very quickly, because of these tools. And it's a far cry from who I was back in 2016 when I was crying because I got water on some toilet paper. I was crying over soggy toilet paper. And with these practices, I have seen myself change and evolve and become a completely different person who handles all of life's challenges with ease, like a little blip in the road instead of a mountain to climb over. And you can do that too. In fact, it was my ability to get over this illness that was my inspiration to bring this program back. Like I said, I've been teaching this for many, many years. I've been studying it for many, many years, and I want to bring this to as many people as possible. So I have taken all of the most powerful tools and brain exercises that I have discovered in the last 13 years, and I have condensed them into a 10-week program. So you don't have to go through all the years of studying and practicing that I have, and instead, I'm going to give you the most important tools and exercises all in a 10-week program. So if you are interested in learning how to do that with me, we start in January 2023, and I would be so excited to have you. You can send me a note, send me an email, send me a DM on the Instagrams at CandiceJames.kj on the Instagrams. You can also go to CandiceJames.com/make life better, and all the information is there. I hope that you join me, because together we truly can make your life better, and we can quiet those negative thought spirals that you hear in your mind every single day by rewiring your brain to work for you instead of against you. All right, peace out. I hope to see you soon. Bye.